There's something peculiar about the moments after someone dies. Not the drama of the last breath or the stillness that follows, but the minutes and hours that belong entirely to the living. The body doesn't instantly transform into something alien. At first, it's almost unchanged, warm, familiar, still carrying the weight of the person who was just here. But beneath the skin, the process has already begun. When the heart stops, oxygen ceases to circulate. Without oxygen, cells can't maintain their walls. They rupture, spilling enzymes into the surrounding tissue, beginning a slow cascade of self-digestion, a process called autolysis. The immune system, once a constant guard, falls silent. Bacteria in the gut, the same ones that once helped digest food, now begin to digest you. They release gases like methane and hydrogen sulfide, inflating the body and carrying a scent the brain instinctively knows to fear. Blood, no longer pushed by the heart, succumbs to gravity, livor mortis, pooling in the lowest points of the body and staining the skin deep purple. Within hours, rigor mortis sets in, muscle stiffening as calcium floods into the fibers. Over the next day or two, the body's temperature, rigor mortis, falls until it matches the room around it. Science tells us all of this without ceremony. Decomposition, necrosis, microbial bloom. The sequence is precise, predictable. But how we respond to those changes, what we choose to do with the body in those fragile early hours, is not science at all. It's belief. Belief determines whether we touch the skin one last time or step back in fear, whether we dress the body for a funeral or have it incinerated by fire. And in that way, the body after death becomes a kind of mirror, reflecting what we value, what we fear, what we choose to remember. We like to think of death as an ending, but endings are neat. They tie off clean. In the real world, it usually isn't like that. Dying is a messy ordeal, and someone has to deal with the mess. Death Stranding takes this idea of dealing with the mess and pushes it to its limits. In its world, death is no longer a private event. When someone dies, their body doesn't just decay, it necrotizes. If left unattended, it triggers a void out, an explosion so massive it erases entire sections of the map. This turns handling the dead into urgent work. Not symbolic or leisurely, it becomes a sort of an immediate problem. In the game, aside from the other cargo you're already carrying, you sometimes also have to carry a dead body on your back, feeling its weight shift as you cross mountains and rivers. The straps dig into your shoulders, the balance tilts, the breath quickens. There are no shortcuts here, only alternate routes and dilemmas of a steep hill or strong currents. The journey is the point. It's strangely intimate. The camera lingers on your slow steps. The wind buffets you, and in this world, rain stings your skin. The game forces you to take care for the body you're carrying, to acknowledge its presence and its fragility. One reckless misstep, and you risk falling down and losing all your progress. In every culture, the way we treat the dead is a mirror for what we believe about the living. In Death Stranding's fractured America, a corpse is both a relic and a bomb, something to be feared and something to be carried with reverence. That paradox forces you to value the body in ways you might never have considered, to see it as both dangerous and sacred. And that's not unique to this world. Across history, across continents, the dead have been handled with the same mix of fear, love, and necessity, shaping rituals as different as the lands they come from. The question of what do we do with the body has 1,000 answers, mostly depending on where you are in the world. In the mountains of Sulawesi, Indonesia, a boy holds his grandfather's hand. The skin is taut and dark, the fingers rigid, but the grip, if you can call it that, feels familiar. The boy was born decades after the man died, but in Toraja tradition, that doesn't matter. Every few years, the family opens the coffin, lifts the body from its resting place, and brings him back into the light. They call it manene, the ceremony of cleaning corpses. Dust is brushed away from the face, the hair is combed, the cigarette is placed between stiff lips. The dead are dressed in new clothes, sometimes sunglasses, sometimes a hat. Then they are walked back through the village like old friends returning from a long trip. It's not macabre, not frightening. The Torajans don't see this as disturbing the dead. They see it as maintaining a relationship, a way of saying you're still with us, you always will be. High on a plateau in Tibet, the wind is relentless. Here, the air is too thin for the earth to take a body. The ground is rock and frost, the trees sparse. Instead, the sky takes it. A group gathers at the charnel ground for what's called a sky burial. The body is placed on a flat stone, wrapped in white cloth. There is chanting, low, steady, and then the rogyapa, the body breaker, begins his work. The flesh is carefully separated from the bone. Barley flour and yak butter are mixed in, forming a paste that the waiting vultures recognize instantly. They descend in a storm of wings, tearing the offering apart. Bones are smashed, mixed again, and given to the birds. Within an hour, nothing remains. This is not an act of violence, but of generosity. In life, you consume the world, and in death, you feed it. The sky burial is a final gift. These rituals couldn't be more different in practice. Some destroy the body, some preserve it forever, some invite it back into everyday life. But they share a common thread. The body is not just remains, it's a story still being told. For years, Kratos was rage made flesh. Most knew him as the ghost of Sparta, a man who solved problems with a blade to the neck or a whole temple collapsing around him. His story was written in the blood of gods, titans, and anyone unfortunate enough to stand in his way. But when God of War was released in 2018, the first thing he does is cut down a tree. Not for war, not for revenge, but simply for a funeral. His hands, once built for killing, strip bark from its trunk with deliberate, almost careful motions. Before the axe bites in, he carves Faye's handprint into the wood, not as a weapon, but as a keepsake. We never meet her alive. Her absence is the first thing the game teaches us. When he drags the tree back to their home, we see the pyre. The wood is laid in a neat square, Faye's body resting at its center, wrapped in linen. There's a moment before the flames, not of prayer, but of quiet preparation. Kratos places a hand on her shroud, not gently but firmly, almost as if testing whether she's truly gone. The fire rises slowly at first. Atreus, son of Kratos, stands there, small and still, watching the smoke curl up and vanish into the trees. This is his first encounter with death, and already it's not an ending, it's the beginning of a journey. Faye's last wish is to have her ashes scattered from the highest peak in the realms. The game is, in a way, a funeral procession that never ends. Every monster fought, every puzzle solved, every frozen mountain climbed, all of it is part of carrying her, even when her body is long gone. It's not just a quest for closure, it's a meditation on the slow work of grief. How you keep moving forward not because you're ready to let go, but because carrying the person, their memory, their promise, is the only way you know how to live. It may not be too profound, but there is definitely something to reflect on this story about how we handle the death of a loved one. Death here is not an erasure, but a redirection. The love they had for her becomes motion, and that motion carries them, even when the path is hostile, even when the air is thin. In many games, death is a cutscene. In God of War, it's basically the entire plot. Before the Green Mile is about miracles, prison politics, or even the supernatural, it's about a hallway. A long stretch of worn linoleum lit by harsh bulbs, leading to a single room at the end. They call it the Mile, the last walk a prisoner takes before the electric chair. Every step echoes, every breath feels too loud. Paul Edgecombe, the head guard, knows every inch of that hallway. He's walked it with men who cursed their way to the chair, and with men who could barely keep their legs moving. He's learned to keep the pace steady, to make the end come with as little fear as possible. There's a routine. Adjust the straps, wet the sponge, pull the hood. Do it the same way every time so it feels less like killing and more like procedure. But the truth is, there is no way to make it clean. Even when they follow every rule, the air in that room is heavy. And after, the work continues, carrying the body out, wiping the seat, folding the straps back neatly, as if preparing for the next man. When John Coffey arrives, massive, quiet, and carrying an unspoken grief, the ritual somehow changes. He's gentle, almost childlike, and yet the sentence is the same. Paul walks him down the mile not like a prisoner, but like someone guiding a loved one through a door they can't return from. And maybe that's what the mile is at its core, a ritual of care disguised as punishment, adjusting the straps so they don't chafe, speaking softly to keep the fear at bay, placing a hand on a shoulder when words fail. None of it changes the outcome, but it changes the leaving. It's the same instinct behind a hand held in a hospital bed, a glass of water lifted to dry lips, a blanket tucked in one last time. The knowledge that we can't stop what's coming makes the care we give in those final moments matter even more. Because I think the end of life is rarely about grand gestures. It's really about the smallest acts we can still do for someone who is about to go. In the very popular series, The Walking Dead, death is never final. A body on the ground is not an ending. It's more of a warning. Leave it untouched and it will get back up. This changes everything about how you care for the dead in this world. Funerals become hurried affairs. Graves are dug shallow because there's no time. Every burial ends with the same brutal necessity, a blow to the skull, just in case. There's still mourning, but it's hidden under urgency. You can't linger at the casket if the casket might start moving. Every goodbye has an edge of violence, a final act that feels almost like betrayal, breaking the body so it can't betray you first. But even here, the instinct to care doesn't vanish. We see it in the way survivors still wrap the body in a blanket before putting it in the ground, in the way someone stays behind to keep watch while the grave is filled, in the way they speak to the dead, as if some part of them might still hear. It's a harsh, unromantic world, yet the same truth remains. We try to give the dying and the dead whatever dignity the circumstances allow, whether that's a warm pyre, a last walk, or a grave with a stone. It's all an attempt to say, you were here, you mattered. Even in a world where death never really stops, we keep finding ways to care for it. Philippe Ari spent much of his career studying something most historians avoided: our relationship with death. In his book, Western Attitudes Toward Death, he argued that for most of European history, death was not hidden, it was familiar. Medieval people died at home, often in the same bed they were born in. Friends, neighbors, and children gathered around the dying person. The body wasn't taken away immediately, it remained in the home for days. People touched it, kissed it, sometimes even slept in the same room. Death was part of the texture of daily life. Aries calls this tame death, not because it was painless, but because it was integrated. The living and the dead shared space. Mourning was not something done in secret, it was a communal responsibility. But over centuries, particularly from the 90th to the 20th, Aries noticed a transformation. Death moved out of the home and into institutions. Hospitals, morgues, funeral homes. The dying became patients, the dead became cases. We began using euphemisms, avoiding the word death entirely. This, Aries argued, created forbidden death, a kind of cultural amnesia where we no longer know what to do with the body or with ourselves when death arrives. We outsource the rituals, letting strangers handle the work that once bound communities together. Aries believed that how a culture handles its dead reveals what it fears, what it values, and what it refuses to look at. And maybe in the stories and rituals we've been talking about, we're seeing different answers to the same question. What do we owe the body when the person is gone? I keep thinking about the first funeral I remember. I don't recall the eulogies or the verses read in a trembling voice, but I do remember the flowers. One by one, we placed them into the casket, small bursts of color against the dark fabric, just before my grandfather was lowered into the earth. It was a quiet gesture, almost ordinary, but in that moment, it was everything. A thank you, a final gift, a way of saying we still love you when the words were no longer enough. And maybe that's the truth about death. No matter what form it takes, a pilgrimage across broken landscapes, an odyssey to a mountaintop, a last walk down a long hallway, or the hurried rituals of survival. What we do with the body is rarely for the dead. It's for us. To remind ourselves that even when the world has moved on, we can still stop, still care, still touch what will soon be untouchable. It's how we make a promise that when our time comes, someone will carry us too. And when the work is done, the body is gone, but the promise remains. It lingers in the hands that lowered the casket, in the smoke that drifted from the pyre, in the footsteps down the mile. It stays because love leaves a weight behind, one we never put down.